The illusion of kindness, you hold the door open. You say yes when you mean no. You answer texts immediately, even when you're exhausted. You tolerate interruptions, swallow your opinions, smile to keep the peace. They call you kind, but what you really are is defenseless. It starts early. Before you even understand who you are, you're taught who you're allowed to be. Don't cry. Don't raise your voice. Don't say, I don't like that. Be sweet. Be helpful. Be easy. To love. And so, without realizing it, you become what Carl Jung feared most. Someone who survives not by truth, but by disguise. Every form of addiction is bad, no matter whether the narcotic be alcohol, morphine, or idealism. Carl Jung, you become addicted to being seen as good. But goodness without strength is bait, and toxic people know it. Like wolves spotting a wounded animal in a pack, they smell your need to be accepted, and they know they can use it. Look around. How many people are trapped in relationships where they are slowly disappearing, not through violence, but through constant, quiet self. A man working 80 hours to please a partner who never says thank you. A daughter who visits her abusive mother every week because she's still my mum. A woman who keeps forgiving a liar because everyone has flaws. This is not compassion. This is unconscious submission. This is what Jung called a soul in exile. A person living under the tyranny of their own persona. The false self we wear to be loved. The persona is that which in reality one is not, but which oneself as well as others think one is. Carl Jung, 2 essays on analytical psychology. The cost of this illusion, your soul, your center, your power. But here's the secret, no. One told you when you stop playing the role, when you reclaim the parts of you that scare others, the manipulators leave. They can't use what they can't predict. They can't dominate what doesn't need their approval. This video is not about becoming dangerous. It's about becoming whole, and how that wholeness becomes your shield. We'll explore what Jung called the shadow, the repressed force within you that contains your courage, your truth, your no. The reason toxic people cling to you is because you haven't claimed this yet. But once you do, their grip breaks. This isn't theory. This is biological, emotional, spiritual reality. Across 5 chapters, you'll learn how to see the pattern, reclaim your instinct, and awaken the one part of you that toxic people fear most. Toxic people don't want you to change. They want you to stay blind. Always starts the same way. You finally decide to speak up. Maybe you say no to something small. Cancel a plan, share a boundary, protect your time. And suddenly, the entire dynamic shifts. The one who used to smile at you turns cold, sarcastic, dismissive, or worse, they start to accuse you of being selfish, dramatic, not like you used to be. But you didn't change overnight. You just woke up, and for toxic people, that's unacceptable. Individuation means becoming an individual, and, insofar as individuality embraces our innermost, last, and incomparable uniqueness, it also implies becoming one's own self. Carl Jung, the archetypes, and the collective unconscious, what Jung describes here, the process of becoming who you actually are, not who others told you to be, is the exact process toxic people fear, because toxic people don't form relationships, they build cages. Emotional structures where you play a role, and they hold the script. Let's take Raphael, a young man from a small town who spent his entire life trying to make his father proud. A father who never said well done, who only spoke when criticizing. and who weaponized silence as punishment. For years, Raphael tried harder, studied more, worked longer hours, bought a house, built a family, achieved everything. But the silence never changed. And when Raphael finally sat across from his father and said, "I don't need your approval anymore," do you know what happened? The man who had raised him didn't just get angry, he acted betrayed. Not because Raphael had done something wrong, but because Raphael had broken the contract of control. That's the hidden rule in toxic dynamics. You're allowed to exist, as long as you remain asleep. Resistance to the organized mass can be affected only by the man who is as well organized. In his individuality as the mass itself, Carl Jung, the undiscovered self, other words, the only true protection against manipulation is individuality, self-awareness, a clear, internal center that refuses to bend just to keep the peace. But that peace isn't real. It's a deal with the devil. A life where your value is measured by how useful, how silent, how obedient you are. And here's the painful truth. When you begin to heal, when you break that cycle, you're going to lose people, but not the ones who truly love you, only the ones who needed you blind to stay close. This is why therapy, healing, and boundaries feel so lonely at first. You think you're doing something wrong, but what you're actually doing is turning on the light. And anyone who needs you to stay in the dark was never safe to begin with. Let's say it clearly. The moment you stop apologizing for your truth, the moment you stop filtering your needs through someone else's comfort, the moment you stop choosing guilt over growth, toxic people will recoil, because the person they manipulated no longer exists. The greatest tragedy of the family is the unlived lives of the parents. Carl Jung, modern man in search of a soulland sometimes. You are just the echo of someone else's pain until you wake up and decide to live your own life. You are not here to be agreeable. You are here to be whole. And wholeness is offensive to anyone who survives on illusion. The secret they never told you. Power is not evil. Power has a bad reputation. From childhood, we're taught that being too much is dangerous, that anger is destructive, that confidence is arrogance, that silence is maturity, and pleasing others is virtue. So we shrink, we soften our voice, we trade our fire for approval. But no one tells you that this is exactly how you become easy to hurt. The shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality. For no one can become conscious of the shadow without considerable moral effort. Carl Jung and Jung's idea of the shadow is not just about darkness, it's about power, the parts of you that you had to bury in order to survive. Your no, your rage, your instincts, your boundaries, your inner animal. You were trained to see these as bad, so you disowned them, and in doing so, you became vulnerable to those who didn't. Let's talk about Clara. Clara was kind. In the purest sense, she'd lend money she didn't have, say yes when she wanted to cry no, stay after hours to help co-workers who exploited her. And when her partner began isolating her from friends, criticizing her clothes, controlling her time, she called it love. Because confrontation felt like cruelty, and silence felt like safety. It wasn't until she collapsed, not metaphorically, but literally, on the kitchen floor of a locked apartment after years of psychological control, that she realized kindness without power is a slow death. Where love reigns, there is no will to power. And where the will to power is paramount, love is lacking. Carl Jung, psychological types, this is where most people stop. They believe power and love can't coexist. That to be powerful is to be corrupt. that to be loving is to be small. But Jung disagreed. He believed in integration, the alchemical process of bringing opposites together, masculine and feminine, light and dark, love and power. Power, when disowned, becomes aggression. But when reclaimed consciously, it becomes a boundary, a sacred no, a rooted sovereign presence that says, I will not harm you, but I will never let you harm me either. The truth is, toxic people aren't drawn to bad energy. They're drawn to easy energy. They feed on those who won't fight back, not out of peace, but out of shame. And that shame, it's cultural, it's generational. It's taught, be small and you'll be safe. Be soft and you'll be loved. But the ones who suffer most are always the ones who believe this lie the longest. The acceptance of oneself is the essence of the whole moral problem and the epitome of a whole outlook on life. Carl Jung acceptance means wholeness, not just accepting your light, but your edge, your instincts, your spine, your capacity to protect yourself, even if it makes others uncomfortable. You don't need to scream. You don't need to fight. You just need to stop pretending you're powerless, because nothing repels a manipulator more than someone who doesn't need their permission to speak, to walk away, or to choose themselves, no matter the cost. Clara didn't become cruel. She became clear. She still gives, but not to those who only take. She still loves, but not with the desperation to be loved back. This is what happens when you reintegrate your shadow, not by becoming dangerous, but by becoming whole, and that, Jung believed, is where your real strength lives. Not in perfection, but in power, owned, integrated, unapologetically present. Become the wall they can't climb. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. He didn't justify, explain, or plead. He just stood there, calm, clear, grounded, and in that silence, the manipulator unraveled. There is a kind of presence that can't be invaded, not because it resists, but because it doesn't need to. It's not defensive, it's whole. And this is what Carl Jung called the self. Not the persona we perform, not the shadow we repress, but the integrated, centered being we truly are, beneath the performance and the pain. The self is a quantity that is superordinate to the conscious ego. It embraces not only the conscious, but also the unconscious psyche.